Hello Legacy Sabers, and welcome to Simplifying Radicals, a skill that is going to follow you now since now. It's going to follow you in geometry, your next class, in your math career, and it's also going to follow you further into Algebra 2. So this is a really important topic we're covering today. So guys, square roots. You kind of have used them before already, but let's kind of get down to the dirty details of it. So the square root of a number x is number whose square is x. So basically we can read that the square root of x when you have that little symbol. So the square root symbol is called the radical symbol. You're probably going to be heard it called a radical many times. The argument inside the radical is called the radicand. So if I put a number inside here, so it's like 15, 15 would be known as your radicand. So that's something to be aware of as we're talking. I'll say the radicand is 15. That's something to be aware of. Now, there are such things as perfect roots, and you probably already have them in your notebook, but let's make sure we have them down this time. So, square root of 1 is 1, square root of 4 is 2, square root of 9 is 3, and it's going to keep going down, right? So you're going to definitely want to have at least the square roots and their numbers that they equal down on your notebook, especially getting up to, I would say, about to 12 from here further. Okay, so make sure you have those even in your mind, because you're going to want to be able to come up with 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, and 100 off the top of your head. It's going to make simplifying square roots a lot easier as you continue to work through these. So guys, what we're going to be using is what's known as the product property of square roots. Ultimately, what you can do is the square root of a times the square root of b equals the square root of a times b. So ultimately what you can do is take two square roots when they are multiplied by each other and put them under one square root and multiply the two radicands together. Ultimately, guys, this is used when we're simplifying radicals and also multiplying radicals, which we're going to cover a little later. Our next video is the multiplying radicals part. Today, we're just going to simplify them. So basically, guys, what we're going to be doing is taking each radicand, the number underneath the radical sign, and we're going to break it down, and we're going to make sure we include at least one perfect square. Okay? So, 28. I need to find a perfect square that I can divide out of 28. So I'm going to look in my perfect square list. 1, 4, 9, 16, 25. I'm going to find a number that I can divide into there. So 1, it can go into everything. What about 4? Can I divide 4 into 28, and is it a nice number? So 28 divided by 4. That's 7. So what I can do, guys, is I can split this into two radicals. One with the 4 and one with the 7. Because ultimately, to go backwards, I would multiply these two to get me 28, and it would be under one radical. Well, the square root of 4, guys, is 2, right? Square root of 7 is just the square root of 7. So ultimately, guys, I have simplified this radical. I have made it 2 times the square root of 7. So, square root of 28 is the same as 2 times the square root of 7. If you would do this on the calculator, basically what you would do is 2 times square root of 7, enter. You should get the same answer as you would with the square root of 28. Keep that in mind. Let's try 68. So what number can we divide into 68? Which perfect square can we divide into 68? Let's try 4. Does 4 go in? 68 divided by 4? Yeah, at 17. So I'll get square root of 4 and the square root of 17, right? Square root of 4 is 2. So, whoops, I would have 2 square roots of 17. That should be a 1 right here. My bad, guys. So all you're doing, guys, is just finding a square root that can go in, or perfect square that can divide into the number. So square root of 60, let's take a 4. I think 4 can go into 60 as well. Well, that'll be 2. Square root of 15 is just the square root of 15. So it'd be 2 square roots of 15 and 60. Now, always double check the number that you get at the end in this square root. Double check, can I divide anything into 15? Or is it the simplest it can be? So is there a number, a perfect square, that can divide into that number? And if your mind says no, then you can't. So then that would be your final answer. Let's try a couple more. So I got square root of 75. Let's try to find a perfect square. Well, 4 doesn't go into 75. 9 doesn't either, because 75 divided by 9, it's like decimals, and you want a nice number when it comes out. Can't divide 16 in. 25. 25 and 3 makes 75, right? So I can make this the square root of 25, square root of 3. So this would be 5 square roots of 3. 5 times the square root of 3 ultimately would be the square root of 75. Let's try 44 here. So I know 4 can divide in there. And 4 times 11 is 44, right? 44 divided by 4 is 11. 11 doesn't have any other perfect squares. So 2 square roots of 11 for my final answer. Now, notice, guys, there's this 3 sitting out here. Don't worry about him. Let's just carry him along for the ride for a little while. Let's break down the square root of 18, which I know is the square root of 9 times the square root of 2, right? 9 times 2 is 18. Square root of 9 is 3. But now, don't forget about that random 3 we had sitting out front. Technically, guys, it's going to be 3 times square root of 2, which we can simplify down into 9 square roots of 2. So if there is a number sitting outside of the radical, what you're going to want to do is multiply it by the 9 or whatever you get out of your perfect square once you square root the perfect square. Last 2 of the video. So square root of 56, guys. Let's find a perfect square. 4 goes in. 56 divided by 4, that is 14. So I can make this the square root of 4, square root of 14. Well, square root of 4 is 2 square roots of 14. And 14, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on what you think about it, does not break down. 63, I cannot divide 4 into 63. 9 does, though. 63 divided by 9 is 7. So this would be square root of 9, square root of 7, or 3 square roots of 7, right? Square root of 200, I can divide a 4 in there, so I'm going to divide a 4 in first. Square root of 4, and that would be square root of 50. It's 2. But notice, guys, 50. 50 is a pretty big number. 4 doesn't go into 50. 9 does. 25 does, though. So I do need to break this further. I must not have taken out the biggest perfect square because I have to break down further. So this would be 25 and 2, right? Well, this is 5. So it'd be 2 times 5 times the square root of 2 for my final answer, which is 10 square roots of 2. Notice, guys, ultimately, I could have, which you probably were screaming at me, I could have done 102, right? 100 is 10. So ultimately, guys, you can break it down multiple ways if there is multiple perfect squares that can come out. The only thing is you want to try to make sure that if you break down with a smaller perfect square, be wary, be careful that you can't break out the next number down further. Something to be careful of, okay? And that's the end of this video. See you later, Savers.